Good morning and welcome to today's edition of the Danielle Daily. I'm Danielle Watson. Thank you so much for joining me. It is Thanksgiving week here and I have a really interesting topic I think for you guys this morning. The idea of gratitude as a cover-up for fear and frustration. Now, I've addressed the topic of gratitude before in a way like this and I got flamed, and so I will not be surprised if I get flamed again today, but we'll see. I'm going to take the risk and put myself out there and express maybe an unpopular opinion, but something that I've observed that I think is worth talking about. So I hope you'll find it helpful. And again, thank you so much for joining me. I know a lot of us are really busy getting our Thanksgiving shopping done, getting our houses clean, steeling our nerves for the kind of relatives that maybe frustrate us somewhat. And if you haven't been over to my Facebook page recently, you should definitely check it out. I actually put together some tips and techniques you can use when those difficult family conversations come up, and they actually have scripts that you can use and ways that you can sort of manage those personalities in your life that maybe are a little bit difficult and challenging, especially this time of year when there's so much sort of intensity already coming at us. So I don't know where you are in the world today, but where I am, it is super windy and I have the fireplace on, which is great. It helps me stay a little bit warm, but I've noticed that there is some wind sound sort of coming down through the fireplace, so I'm hoping that won't be too distracting. So I apologize if it is, but I really appreciate you joining me again. I'm Danielle Watson. This is the Danielle Daily. We're talking about what will probably be a little bit of an unpopular position. I've tested the waters on this before, and I've noticed that it is not a popular stance, but it's something I believe, and I think there are other people who will see it the way I do, and so I wanted to go ahead and express it anyways. It looks like Nathan has joined us. Thank you so much. So today's topic is using gratitude as a cover-up for frustration and fear. And I feel like I see this a lot in social media, and each time I have sort of tested the waters on this, I end up getting flamed. And so if you want to flame me, you can, I can take it. I'm a big girl. I might go cry about it a little bit, but then I'm going to get right back up on the horse, because this is something that I've observed that I think is really something that people are not talking about and that we need to discuss more. And I think it is the root cause of a lot of frustration when it comes to social media. You know, you hear people saying a lot, oh, social media is just the highlights reel, or that's your Facebook life, not your real life, your fake life. And I think a lot of that frustration comes from people wanting to have genuine connections with one another. And the way that we go about expressing ourselves doesn't always facilitate a real connection. And I find that this gratitude piece, especially this time of year, it tends to come up. So I'll tell you a little story about how I noticed this, and I'd love your feedback on what you think about it if you've noticed this too. So gratitude as a cover-up for fear and frustration. I first noticed it a few years back when I noticed this interesting pattern. So I have a lot of friends on Facebook. I had far fewer back then, but I had a lot of new friends on Facebook because I've only been on maybe 4 years, probably closer to 3. And there were these women who I was connecting with, and they would be on Facebook expressing how wonderful their husband was and how wonderful their relationship was. And it was so great, and it was so wonderful, and they were so grateful for this person, and he was wonderful in every way, shape, and form. And then a couple of months later, I would see a post that they were getting a divorce or that they had ended the relationship. And I found that so confusing because here was the perfect, most awesome guy who was perfect in every way. And then suddenly the relationship was over, and all the ugliness of what they were frustrated with and what hadn't worked for them in the relationship would start to come out. And I thought, that's really interesting the first time I noticed it. And then I noticed this was sort of a pattern. Right before somebody's relationship would end or their marriage would break apart, there would be all these posts about how wonderful the partner was. And I haven't noticed it with men, and I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I don't have as many male Facebook friends, but I definitely noticed it with women. And so it got me to thinking about, what's really happening here? What is happening that one day we're expressing all our gratitude and love for somebody and how wonderful they are, and then the next thing we know, that relationship has been ended? And I just thought that was really interesting. So I wanted to give you some observations on that. Hello, Lisa has joined us. Thank you so much. So again, if you're just joining us, I'm Danielle Watson. This is the Danielle Daily. I'm approaching gratitude from a controversial perspective today. I'm giving some observations that I've made, and I've test marketed this idea before, and I have gotten flamed. So if you really hate what I'm saying, I can take it. You're allowed to post it in the comments. I really, really appreciate you guys. I know it's not a popular stance, but I feel like not talking about the way that we use gratitude to cover up fear and frustration is causing a rift, and it's causing us to feel like we're disconnected from people, and it's causing us to feel like people are not being their genuine selves. And so I wanted to talk about it, how I've noticed it, and what I think we can do about it, and just see, what you guys think. Hi, Lisa. Thank you for saying hi. Hi, Ashley. Thank you for saying hi. So yeah, these are some of my gratitude girls here who don't fall into this observation that I was just sharing. I'll recap it just quickly since several of you have just joined us. But I noticed back when I was really new to Facebook that there were many friends of mine who would express all kinds of love and gratitude and appreciation for their mate, and then soon after that they would end the relationship or they would get divorced. And I remember thinking this was very weird because I didn't know these people very well, but what I'd seen was just an outpouring of gratitude and thinking that this mate was this wonderful person, and then suddenly the relationship was over and all this stuff was coming out about how that guy wasn't good. And I only noticed it from the women's perspective, and I can't say it doesn't happen from men, but I just have a lot more women in my circle than men. And so they were all high on expressing how great their mate was, and then they were done with him and he was a jerk. And so I noticed this kind of happening over and over again. I can actually sort of predict it now when I see it in my feed. People overly expressing gratitude for somebody, that this relationship is on the outs. And I wanted to talk about why I think we do this, what we can do about it, and sort of how it's impacting people. Because I know a lot of people complain that Facebook is a false book, or that it's the highlights reel, that we're not really expressing the whole of ourselves. And I have many opinions on that, but this is a phenomenon I've definitely noticed, and I wanted to talk about it because we're all thinking about gratitude right now. We're all expressing what we're grateful for. But I think that sometimes we use gratitude as a way to cover up what we're afraid of or what we're frustrated with. And so I'd like to just see that not have to happen anymore, and for us to have more real relationships. So that's why we're talking about it today. So I think the reason that this is happening is that people are in a place of frustration. They're frustrated with the relationship, and so they're kind of using the fake it till you make it philosophy. So they're kind of in the last throes of frustration, and so they're trying really hard to appreciate whatever they can, and they're amplifying the volume on it by doing it over social media. And honestly, I don't think there's anything wrong with practicing your way into feeling the way you want to feel. But what ends up happening is that it feels like we're not really being authentic, and so it ends up feeling yucky, and it ends up landing kind of in a yucky way on other people. It looks like Tim has joined us. Thank you so much. So we're really talking about gratitude from an unpopular perspective today, and I'm curious what you guys think. I am completely willing to stand here and be flamed by you if you think that I'm being ridiculous, but honestly, I think it's not uncommon for people to use gratitude as a cover-up for deep frustration, especially in relationships. Like I said, I've noticed that many people will express ridiculous amounts of gratitude for a mate or partner or husband, and then they will, a couple months later, be expressing how they had to leave that person, or that relationship is over because they can't stand that person anymore, and here's all the reasons that this person was no good. And I think that's happening because people are very frustrated with the relationship, and they're using a practice of gratitude to try to shift that around, which is admirable. It's wonderful to pick a practice and use it to shift your relationship with another person. But I think the result of it ends up being that it's confusing for ourselves, and then it's confusing for other people. So other people are confused because they're like, wait a minute, this guy was just Mr. Wonderful, and now you're getting a divorce? Or we feel like in ourselves that we're not being authentic because we're saying, oh, this person is so wonderful, I love every single thing about this person, but inside we're feeling disappointed with that person. We're feeling like that person isn't meeting our needs, and we're feeling like we wish that person would be different. And so I wanted to talk about that today because I don't feel like that's really something that gets talked about very much. Michelle says, interesting perspective. Thank you. I appreciate that polite response. Like I said, I've floated this idea before. I usually get flamed for it, but I'm willing to risk it because I think that what we really want is more authentic connection with others, and what we really want is to express how we're really feeling. And I am in no way advocating that we start talking about all the garbage that goes on in relationships, but I think this sort of over-the-top response of just pushing so much gratitude out there about something that we're actually frustrated about is causing a feeling of disconnect in ourselves and between us and other people. And so I think I have a suggestion for how we can solve this, and I hope you guys are willing to listen. I hope it will help you. I do have today's note to self for you, and if you're just joining us again, I'm Danielle Watson. This is the Danielle Daily. We're talking about gratitude here today. We're talking about it from a little bit different perspective, where we might actually be using it as a tool that hurts us rather than that helps us. I think having a practice of gratitude, or any kind of practice that helps us become the person we want to become, is a wonderful thing. But I sometimes think we use very healthy practices in an unhealthy way. And so I wanted to just bring a different perspective on what I've noticed, and maybe you'll consider whether you've seen that in your own life or whether you've seen it in the people around you. And then hopefully my suggestion for how we could turn this around will be helpful to you. That's really the point. I want you to be able to help yourself have the life that you want to have, and for you to be able to act the way you want to act, and for you to be able to think the way you want to think. And all these practices, like having a gratitude practice, help us to do that. But when we use it in a way that feels yucky inside, we're not actually progressing towards where we want to go. So it looks like Kim is watching. Thank you so much. So I've been talking about gratitude and how sometimes we use it to cover up fear or frustration. I gave some very specific examples of how I've seen that in social media. And so if you're just joining us, I suggest once the broadcast is complete, you go back and watch the recording, because it's really something that I think is worth thinking about. Even if you completely disagree with me, I really think it's something worth thinking about. And I think I would I would love to hear your perspectives on solutions and what we can do about this, because I know that the practice of using gratitude to cover up fear and frustration is an attempt to shift our relationship around with people or with situations that are frustrating us, but it doesn't end up actually producing that result. And in fact, it ends up creating a rift within ourselves and between ourselves and others. And so what I'm wanting is for people to be able to be more free to express what's actually going on with them. And I don't mean just pouring out all the ugliness that sometimes we're feeling, but actually being able to ask for help. I think that's one of the things that keeps us from being able to change things into the kind of relationships that we want to have. Is we're trying to do it all by ourselves, and we don't know how to ask for help, and we're feeling frustrated, so we go, okay, gratitude is the way, I'm going to practice gratitude, but we don't actually end up addressing what's actually bothering us. And I feel like everybody I know is smart enough that if they knew what was actually bothering them, that they would change it. Like, they wouldn't keep doing whatever it was that was causing them to feel the way that they're feeling. They're all smart enough to do that, but for whatever reason, they are not really understanding what it is that's really bothering them and what's really creating the problem. And so they're not changing it. And so I think the thing to do is just to learn to express to people, hey, I'm really struggling with this right now, and here's what I could use. And I think that's really the key difference between just expressing a frustration and actually developing a practice of moving towards solving it and having a solution, is expressing what's bothering you truthfully and succinctly, and then asking for help, asking for what you need, asking for people to give you ideas about how they've solved this problem, asking for people to send you positivity, asking for people to direct you to resources they think could help you. So I think this practice of expressing gratitude when we're really feeling fear and frustration is an attempt to create a shift that I think is really healthy, but I think the result of not asking for help when we need it ends up creating a result that is not what we want. And so I'm trying to have a conversation here about how we can change that around and how we can just change our behaviors a little bit so that we are getting the connection that we want, and we're getting the information we need to be able to put the practices into place that will help us get where we want to go. But I also know that I'm talking about it from a very unpopular perspective, and so I would love to have your thoughts on what I said, even if it's, I think you're crazy and I used to like you, but now I think you're a jerk, which is, it's okay. I can live with it, but I think this is something that really needs to be discussed. And so if you joined us later in the broadcast, I do hope you'll go back and watch the recording and listen to the example I gave about how I've witnessed this on social media. And like I said, I think the solution is not that, gratitude, a practice of gratitude is not a good thing. It's an absolutely wonderful, beautiful thing. It's something that I have used to help myself change things around in my life. But I think sometimes we do use it to cover up a fear and frustration. And if instead we could have a practice of actually asking for what we need and asking for help when we need it and expressing what's really going on with us in a healthy way, I think that the result would be so much better. And then we could practice expressing what we are truly grateful for rather than sort of using it as a cover-up. So I don't know what you think about that, but I would love to hear it. It looks like Deborah joined us. I'm just about to give today's note to self, so if you have it, grab a pen, grab a paper so that you can write this down. I think this one will be really a big truth for you. This will be something that will help you remind yourself of how you want to express yourself in the world and how you want to understand yourself internally as well. So here it is. Are you ready to write it down? I hope so. Okay. So today's note to self is be grateful, but also be truthful with yourself, especially with yourself. I know we can't always express all of our truth on our Facebook page, and I don't expect anyone to. We have different layers of people in our life, different people who have earned a certain level of intimacy in our relationship with them. And so I'm not in any way saying you need to be 100% truth 100% of the time on Facebook, but what I am saying is that practice gratitude, but also be truthful with yourself. So don't use something as beautiful as a gratitude practice to cover up fear and frustration and to give yourself an excuse for not addressing it and not doing anything about it. So those are my thoughts on gratitude, on how we use it sometimes in a dysfunctional way, and I hope that I gave you some solutions and some insight that you can use to use this practice in the way that it was intended and not to use it as a way to stuff down what you're actually feeling. So please let me know in the comments if that was helpful for you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I hope that if you haven't already gotten all your things together for Thanksgiving, that you'll be able to do that really soon. And I will see you guys here tomorrow, okay? I'm Danielle Watson, and this has been the Danielle Daily. I'll see you then. Bye.